This week on Stay in the Truck, we're going to preview Week 7. So grab you a cold beverage and let's go. Welcome to Stay in the Truck, the ultimate podcast for sports enthusiasts and avid gamblers alike. Each week we'll provide you with invaluable insights, analysis, and tips to elevate your game. We can be found on all major podcast and social media outlets. See the show notes for details. Stick around to the end to hear this week's most boneheaded sports moments with our Stay in the Truck Awards. So let's jump right into this week's show. Wow, Chris, this week was a big week for college football with some pretty big games that's going to impact this year's playoff picture. We saw 7 AP-ranked teams get beat this week. And believe it or not, the Pac-12 has 7 teams in the AP Top 25 this week.
Unbelievable. And they still don't play defense, and they're all in the top 25.
Well, Chris, it looks like it's just you and me tonight, buddy. We are missing the Jays. So Jeff and Josh are both MIA tonight. So we'll do our best to
hold it down.
So we'll do our best to hold it down.
All right. We can do this, T. Yep. We got it.
Good. So I got an interesting stat for you.
Okay.
So Duke, Kansas, University of Kentucky, University of North Carolina, and UCLA are considered by many to be the true basketball blue bloods.
Absolutely.
This week marks the first time all 5 are ranked in the same AP poll for football, which that poll has been around since 1936.
That's crazy. I mean, who knew it? Well, Duke is on a downhill slide. Unfortunately for them, losing Riley Leonard is gonna change a lot of what we've been seeing through them. And these guys are about to start eating each other alive in conference play. But unfortunately, I think Duke's run is over. And I really like Riley Leonard. I hope he recovers and comes back. But what an interesting turn of events to have those schools even being talked about during football season, much less ranked.
Yeah, I mean, University of Kentucky, Georgia kind of exposed them this past week. UNC, I mean, I think they're pretty good. Drake May's going off. So we'll see at the end of the year how many of them are still basketball schools and how many of them have a football program.
Well, we'll know soon because some of them got some tough games coming up.
The top Heisman contenders right now, the top 3 are all Pac-12 quarterbacks.
And they're killing it. They're all killing it. But I'm going to tell you what. Let's jump right into Caleb Williams. It took USC and Caleb Williams 3 overtimes to knock down Arizona this week, a 3-2 Arizona team. And when you go back and watch that game and watch those stats, Noah Fafita, the quarterback for Arizona, absolutely played lights out. He was 25 for 35 with 303 yards and 5 touchdowns to 1 interception. He outplayed Caleb Williams. The Arizona rushing attack ran for 203. They outran and outplayed USC. It's absolutely amazing that USC came away with a win in this game. I can't believe it. Arizona has got to be the best 3-3 team in the country. I have no doubts about it. One thing I noticed about this Arizona Wildcat team that is now 3-3 is that they haven't lost a single game by more than a touchdown. And they've only lost to good teams. And unfortunately, their schedule is not forgiving. The next 3 weeks, these guys have to face Washington State, Oregon State, and UCLA. So the Pac-12 over the next few weeks, they're really going to start chewing each other up, and we're going to see who the big dogs are. So, and I'm curious to see how it goes. But let's jump into that UCLA game that we saw this week with Chip Kelly taking his team to upset Washington State. And the question we got to ask is, can they do it again this week with Oregon State coming to town? I mean, those guys jumped. They were unranked going into week 6, and the polls came out, and now UCLA is all of a sudden number 18. So what a large jump, and what a move for those guys. Can they handle the pressure now and keep the head of steam? Yeah,
Chris, that game was pretty close until UCLA put up 13 points in the fourth quarter to win 25-17.
Well, I just can't believe that either UCLA has a much better defense than anybody expected them to, or Cameron Ward was just off. I mean, he was pathetic, really. I mean, he was 19 of 39 for the night, less than 50% passing, 2 interceptions, and UCLA just really put the pressure on him. They brought the heat, and he couldn't handle it. So I'm curious to see a couple of things. I mean, is this going to catapult UCLA? Are they going to start trending upward? Is this going to take Washington State? And and create a roadmap for the other teams on how they can effectively defend Cameron Ward and that passing offense of Washington State. So it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to see how all these teams beat each other up. It's finally fun that we have a conference with a lot of ranked teams, and they get to see what it feels like to live and breathe in the SEC. Maybe not with all the defense, but from a standpoint of all these guys are ranked, and now they get to chip away at each other all year. So we'll see how that goes.
So let's talk about this Colorado-Arizona State game. Well, Deion about gave that game away.
He tried. He wanted to. I mean, the Colorado Buffaloes, they really hit the door running this year. I mean, they came out, played TCU. Everybody thought it was going to be the same TCU team that we've seen in the past, the same TCU team that we saw make the national championship last year. And what we've learned is that at this point in the season, that TCU team is 3-3 and can barely beat their way out of a wet paper bag. So that Buffalo game that started them on such a high has kind of started trending down, and we've seen them not only get destroyed by Oregon, come back and struggle with a 1-5 Arizona team. I mean, it was just a rout. You know, what we wonder is Travis Hunter, is a healthy Travis Hunter going to make up that big of a difference and make them competitive against good teams? Because the way they've looked so far, the Buffaloes are back to what I would consider hopefully being in a rebuilding stage of some sort. And that's the best I can say for them. I mean, they really have been less than impressive. They should have lost the game. I mean, thank goodness that Shador, who seems to have some sort of fourth quarter magic, if not for him, they would easily be 2-4 team. I mean, he has put together 2 last-minute late fourth quarter drives that have won the game. But you know, good players have to show up in crunch time, and that's what he's done. He definitely
showed. He had a 2-minute drill, you know, and he was able to go 43 yards to set up the game-winning field goal, and that was a lot of pressure on that kicker.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. So, but again, you go back and look at the stats in this game. Colorado, you know, they passed for 239 yards. Arizona State just beat the brakes off of them, outpassed them by 100 yards. You look at the rushing attack, both teams were pretty pitiful, really. Colorado rushed for 56 yards and Arizona State rushed for 57. So somewhere those guys have got to find a running game if they want to compete against a decent team. But very little to be excited about for Colorado fans, the way they were excited after those first 2 weeks of the season.
But you know, from where they started at last year, I mean, Deion's already done what Deion was hired to do, right?
That's right.
Right? And so he's increased their win percentage from last year, already 400%, 500%?
Right. What were they, 1-11 last year, or 1-10, 1-11?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's like, what if they don't win another game this year? Do they consider it, you know, and I'm talking about the fan base and the boosters, do they consider it a win for the season? They got so used to winning that, you know, they expected to win another 3 or 4 games.
Listen, they can get blown out in every game the rest of the year, and this season is a win just based on revenue.
Amen to that.
That's it. The revenue was up 500% on every front, from seats and ticket prices to fans in the stadium to all of the gear and the merchandise.
All right. How about that Red River rivalry? That thing lived up to the hype this year. That was a good game. That game had 7 lead changes and 3 ties.
I feel like, you know, down here in the Southeast, we don't get to see a lot of games. And but the big games and the TV broadcasting has been better, and with the streaming, we've been able to get our eyes on more games. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was fortunate enough to watch this game starting with the first kickoff. And, I mean, I don't know, in the first 10 minutes, we had fake punt, we had a block punt, we had fumbles, this game was everything that it's supposed to be. It was one of the most exciting games that I've seen in a long time. If Oklahoma continues to roll the way they've rolled so far, Dylan Gabriel is going to be in the talks. He's going to work his way into that top 5 Heisman discussion, because not only did Oklahoma win this game, Dylan Gabriel was just a grown man among men that day, and he was composed and poised. He never got rattled or shook. Being behind didn't bother him. I mean, he absolutely outplayed Quinn Ewers.
Well, Quinn Ewers threw 2 picks in his first 6 tries, And then he followed it up with 19 completions straight.
Well, and he ended up being 31 of 37 for 346 yards. I mean, so.
Do you think it was just the jitters, the pregame jitters, that it took him a while to settle in with just the gravity of this game?
I think he tried to do too much too soon. And I think the Texas offense tried to do too much too soon. I think that they tried to go down the field a little too much too soon. I think that Oklahoma tried to sit back. They ended up averaging about 9.5 yards a pass, but he had to shorten them up. He had to shorten them up and start taking what the defense gave him. Oklahoma, I don't think, wanted to give up. One of their big things coming in this game is I think they wanted to make sure they didn't give up the big play. The rushing attack of Oklahoma, they rushed for 201 yards versus 156 yards for Texas. Dylan Gabriel averaged 8.1 yards a carry. He ran for 113 yards on top of his 285 passing. So I couldn't have been more impressed with Oklahoma. I've been asking, like everybody else, are they for real? And we haven't been able to really watch them play a whole lot throughout the year. So seeing this game from start to finish and now having a gauge after watching Texas play Oklahoma and Texas play Alabama, it's exciting. I would love to see Alabama and Texas play again.
There's a good chance that we're going to see Oklahoma and Texas again in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, and if the winner of that is going to end up in the Final Four, so we'll see. I would love to see a Texas-Alabama rematch, just because I've got a few thoughts on that as well. But overall, exciting game, fun to watch. Another big upset. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody believed in Oklahoma. Everybody said, I saw one, earlier in the week, I saw Brandon Walker listened to Brandon Walker from Unnecessary Roughness talking about how can Dylan Gabriel make up 49 points. Last year, they got beat 49-0. There's no way one guy can make up 49 points. But it's a whole team effort. But he don't have to make up 49 points. He's got to make up 25 points. Because if he's out there getting first downs and he's keeping his offense on the field and he's scoring points, the other team's going to have half as much time and half as much potential to score those points. So all in all, like I said, enjoyed it. Great game. I hope we can get some more good games like that one to watch.
Yeah, I was looking at Oklahoma's schedule, and, they've got number 23 Kansas in a couple of weeks. But outside of that, they should win out now.
They should. They should roll right on out with the flawless season. We'll see what happens in the Big 12 championship. So I can't see anybody on their schedule beating them. All right, before we move on to the Big 10, just real quick, let's wrap up a couple of things I'd like to say about the Big 12. TCU, what a disappointment. You came back after a national championship year. You got your quarterback that was supposed to be your starting quarterback last year, comes back off an injury, and we all expect for you to be in the mix. And you are terrible. Just horrible.
Stay in the truck.
TCU, stay in the truck. I'm telling you. And a quick shout out to Mike Gundy and the boys. They finally picked a quarterback, so they weren't doing a lot of revolving quarterbacks this week. Pulling off the upset against K-State, sticking with one QB. And a lot of credit to their running game because they averaged about 4.5 yards a carry. And they kind of stuck to that and just pounded the ball down the throat until they pulled out the win. So congrats to Oklahoma State for looking like they got a football team again.
Old Michigan's still looking good.
Michigan is scary. But this year, this Michigan team has it together. They're physical. They've got depth. They control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They seem to have their mojo and their confidence, so they don't give a shit who they're playing or what the other team does. They've got a game plan. They're going to go execute it, and everybody else is going to have to sit back and take what they give them.
Yeah, well, they still have Penn State and they still have Ohio State to get through. So I'm not saying they're going to lose those games, but they still have some challenges.
And based on the way they've played so far and the way Ohio State has struggled with several teams so far, it really feels like Michigan is just going to dominate Ohio State to me, and Penn State's the wild card. So, but we'll know that 2 weeks from now. Ohio State plays Penn State. So we're going to get a good idea of what those two guys bring to the table. Which one's going to be the leader of that pack? But speaking of Ohio State, they had a 37-17 win over Maryland, and even though they won by 20, they ended up with 17 fourth quarter points. So
yeah, it was 17-20 going into the fourth quarter.
Right. It was a close game. Little Tagovailoa played well, hung in there as long as he could. and
Little Tua.
So, they gave it a good run. But again, Ohio State, 17 points in the fourth quarter to kind of separate. But they struggled for 3 quarters with those guys. And then one more Big Ten team I want to talk about is, don't be surprised when Wisconsin is sneaking into the conversation toward the end of the year. They've moved to 4-1. I'm curious if they're going to be able to be a threat. They've got Iowa coming up, who's playing with a backup QB this week. But 3 weeks from now, we'll see them and Ohio State get after it. If Ohio State beats Penn State, then we're going to have an Ohio State-Wisconsin game that's going to have a lot on the line. So I look forward to that. But as far as I'm concerned, go Badgers and go anybody that plays against Ohio State. What about that ACC, Tony? What do you got?
Yeah, I was looking at this Notre Dame-Louisville game. Louisville's still undefeated.
Killing it. So I've got a little interesting tidbit about Louisville for you. Do you know how many times Louisville has beat a top 10 opponent in the history of their program?
No clue.
2 times. Once was last year when they beat number 10 Wake Forest, whose quarterback was Sam Hartman.
No way.
And this year, they roll in to number 10 Notre Dame with a win, whose quarterback is Sam Hartman.
What did Sam do to them?
Sam has got no mojo when it comes to Louisville. Louisville is to Sam Hartman what the Philadelphia Phillies are to the Atlanta Braves.
Well, Notre Dame was a 6.5-point favorite, and they gave up in the fourth quarter 16 points to get routed by Louisville.
Which is odd because Notre Dame has played phenomenal defense this year. I've been impressed with their defense in their games.
Well, I mean, Hartman, he threw for 3 interceptions. You just can't do that. And then Jawar Jordan, he ran for 143 yards. So, they were turning the ball over, and Louisville was capitalizing on it.
So North Carolina remained undefeated against a shitty Syracuse team. So no surprise there. But the only downfall to what happened in Miami, we'll get to that in a minute, but the only real downfall to what happened in Miami is that had that not happened, we were set up for an undefeated Miami versus an undefeated North Carolina this weekend. So it took a little bit out of the appeal of that game, made it a little less important. But
Drake May, he looked back in form, because he kind of fell off a little bit, but 442 yards, he was 33 for 47 with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions.
He's killing it. So he's the quarterback class this year for the guys that could be coming out. And who's to say with the NIL stuff? I mean, so many kids that could go into the draft could stay in college and potentially make more money than a rookie contract in the draft. But Drake May is definitely in the conversation for the top few quarterbacks. But it seems,
what was that? Was it Caleb Williams talking about that if he stays at USC, he's going to make more money, like $9 million or something like that? Yeah,
he'll make more money. And then his statement was, "I can choose who I'm going to go play for." And the list was short. The list of teams he would play for, I don't remember exactly what they were. It's been a couple of weeks since he made the statement, but I know it was Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers. And only a couple of other teams. But I'm going to tell you right now, he does not want to go be an Arizona Cardinal. He does not want to go be a Chicago Bear. So I can't blame him. I mean, look, Eli did it and it worked for him. So, these guys who are great players, I would not, if you're a quarterback, do you want to go somewhere that's got no offensive line and put your career in jeopardy, knowing that every time you take a snap, there's a good chance you're going to get your fucking head knocked off?
I mean, how's Bryce Young feel this year?
Oh my gosh, he is.
He's got the lowest QBR rating in the NFL.
Yeah, he's battling. So, they got rid of everybody. They got rid of a team to get him. So he's got no offensive line. He's got no real legitimate number 1 receivers. So, and Caleb Williams doesn't want to be in that same situation. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be curious. But I think that, if he has fun this year, I think he's coming back. Why wouldn't you come back and make $9 million and keep playing it? Caleb Williams is playing flag football. He's out there playing 7-on-7. Like it's ridiculous how good he is. But all right, tell me about this Miami Georgia Tech mess.
What a dumpster fire!
Well, there's a little podcast called "Stay in the Truck" that during their ACC preview back in August, may or may not have made a statement about no matter how good Georgia Tech is, for some reason, Miami always struggles with them. And then we mentioned it again last week. And then what do we have happen this week? The upset of the week with unranked Georgia Tech, who just got their brains beat in by freaking
Bowling Green.
They paid Bowling Green $1 million to come into town to beat the shit out of them, only to go to Miami and pull off the biggest upset of the year. So,
oh, and by the way, you'll love this. Miami, Ohio stomped the shit out of Bowling Green 27-0.
Beat their ass. I saw that.
It was awesome.
Oh my God. So
the real Miami, please stand up.
I mean, so that's the thing. Miami has looked great this year. They've been on a run. They have beat that Texas A&M team, who's pretty decent. And
Miami was a 19.5 point favorite, and even there was the implosion coaching blunder at the end, and I feel bad for those kids. That they basically, the coach lost the game for them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You were a 19.5 point favorite. Why were you even in that situation?
It shouldn't have been a possibility. Like, it should have been long over by then. So, yeah. But they got North Carolina coming up, and I've got some thoughts on how that's going to play out after seeing Miami play Georgia Tech. So, yep. All right, let's talk a little SEC talk. What do you got?
How about the Alabama-Texas A&M game?
Man, I'm going to say something, and this is a total recant of how bad I went off on him after the Texas game. But I got a question for you. Is Jalen Milroe actually pretty damn good?
Here's the thing. Since he was benched against USF in week 3, he has completed 73% of his passes. He's averaged 10.8 yards per pass, 6 touchdowns, and 2 turnovers.
The guy came out against Texas A&M and went 21 of 33 for 321 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. I mean, you can't ask much more of that.
Here's the problem. Alabama had a whopping 23 yards running. Oh, it's the 3rd lowest total since Saban's been at Alabama. So, you remember all that talk we had about when Kentucky rolls into Georgia and we were like, oh, Ray Davis this, Ray Davis that? I mean, they were one-sided. And is Alabama that one-sided, or do they just have a bad day on the running? I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I'm going back here because I wanted to pull something up real quick. So the week before that, they played Mississippi State. In that Mississippi State game, Alabama rushed for 193 yards. So I think that Texas A&M came into this game saying we're going to stop Alabama on the ground and
make Jalen throw. And he did.
And that's exactly what he did. But let's go back on that Mississippi State performance. He was 10 of 12 that week for 164 yards, averaged 13, almost 14 yards a pass. So, but yes, I think that they thought that Alabama was going to come in depending on the run game. They were going to make him throw, and he beat the shit out of them. So that was my whole point about, is he better than we said? It's going to be hard to put an identity on Alabama because I don't know many coaches other than Nick Saban that can have their team prepared to go into a game and adapt to whatever they need to do. If they need to be a running team for that game, they're a running team. If they need to be a passing team, apparently, unbeknownst to us, Jalen Milroe is a fucking passing quarterback. I mean, like, it's unbelievable. I mean, that's attaboy Saban, go do your thing, brother. That's why you're the GOAT, I guess. All right, we saw those dogs roll again over Kentucky. We'll talk a little bit about that in our Dog Show podcast when we go into the SEC and the Georgia Bulldogs a little more. So we'll get back to that later.
Yeah, y'all make sure y'all check out our sister podcast. It's called The Dog Show.
DAWG.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Let's talk about Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels.
Why is he so good against everybody in the country except Florida State? I mean, I don't get an opportunity to watch the whole LSU games, but I did watch the entire LSU-Florida State game, and he just looked like a deer in the headlights. Looked like he had never played a game to me in college. And ever since then, even in their loss to Ole Miss where they scored a ton of points, he is the only reason that this team is 4-2. Without this guy, he is the entire offense. He has to do all the running, has to do all the passing. I'm surprised he's not throwing it to himself. That's how pathetic they are.
Well, I'll tell you, Missouri gave them a run. I thought it was going to be a different game, and then that fourth quarter, they gave up, 22 points or something like that?
Well, I actually thought Missouri was going to win the game. I had Missouri covering, and I thought Missouri was going to be able to pull this game off.
Turn the ball over.
And they threw a pick six late in the game, and that basically
changed the whole momentum.
That was the nail in the coffin. So you take that pick six away, and you got a 42-39 game, and Missouri's driving to win the game. All they need is a field goal to tie. So the pick six killed them. That pretty much ended that game for them and ended their hopes in that game. But I kind of had big hopes for Missouri to. I don't know. Maybe I just dislike LSU a lot, but to see them as a 3-3 team, I hate Brian. I can't stand their fucking coach, man. He's a pompous, just a turd, So I like to see LSU lose a lot.
I didn't like him when he was at Notre Dame, and I've never been a Notre Dame fan, so I kind of have the same feelings about you when he's at LSU. So,
yeah. Well, I root for Notre Dame once a year, and that's when they play Ohio State. And that's just because I can't stand Ohio State a little more than I can't stand Notre Dame. But the Notre Dame coach that kind of fell into that job seems like an awesome guy. And Sam Hartman's a good guy. So I've tried not to be so hard on Notre Dame this year. I actually hoped that they would do a little better.
I don't even think it's who's the coach, and it doesn't even matter who they're playing. Just the fact that they're holding out. And they do ACC for everything else, and they won't jump in because of the money and the contracts and everything. That's why I don't like them.
Yeah, the whole organization is just a bunch of assholes.
But anyway, all in all, it was a great week for football. Like I said, 7 ranked teams got beat this week, so it was a very instrumental week in football. So let's move on to week 7.
Definitely changed the landscape.
Yep, let's move on to week 7. Let's talk about some big games. We're going to start out with probably the premier game of the week. Number 7 Washington's going up against number 8 Oregon. We're featuring 2 top 10 teams and 2 Heisman contending quarterbacks, with Bo Nix and Mike Penix respectively. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a really close game, high scoring game. We got Washington favored by 3 points with an over under of 67.5.
I just want to know why every ESPN analyst I look at, every podcast I watch, they start talking about the Final Four, who's going to make it, who's going to win the Pac-12. I feel like everybody is so stuck on USC, Washington, and Washington State, Oregon State. With
USC got exposed, so I don't think they're going to be in the conversation.
But they're still in the conversation. People cannot stop giving Caleb Williams a reach around. It's like Gary Daniels and Alabama. Like they just have to talk about him. So the problem I've got is that going by the eye test and what I've watched and what I've seen teams do and the coaching staff, the defense that Oregon is actually bringing to the field, to me, Oregon is by far the best team in the Pac-12. I think that Oregon is going to surprise a lot of people. Washington is favored by 3 in this game this week. And I'm rolling Oregon all the way. I got Oregon winning the game. I got Oregon upsetting Washington. I've got them winning the game straight up. And I got them kind of putting on a show and putting the world on notice that, hey, don't forget about us. We're here and we're going to make a stand and we're going to let y'all know it. But they are playing at Washington. And our good friend Jeff, our co-host Jeff, he always says when Bo Nix is not playing at home, there's
bad Bo Nix.
Bad Bo Nix and good Bo Nix. And bad Bo Nix is the road one. So if you go back and look at this game, if you go back and look and break down this game, you've got a Washington team that really hasn't had any major wins this year, right? They've played well, and Michael Penix is fantastic, and I like him, and I think he's got a potential to have a great career in the NFL. But I mean, they started the year with Boise State, then they played Tulsa, then they played a Michigan State team that's in shambles, then they played Cal, which they beat the shit out of Cal. They put up almost 60 points, but they also gave up 32, and then they played that Arizona team we were just talking about, that's 3-3. And here's a team that's top 10 in the country that beat them by 1 touchdown, 31-24. So, I just don't see it. I think they're good, and I think that They've got some potential, but I can't see them. The way Oregon has played and the way Oregon...
But you know what, though?
Yeah.
Other than Texas Tech, who gave Oregon a close game, 38-30, Oregon hadn't really played anybody else.
I know.
So, I mean, I really, you know what? I think you hit the nail on the head.
But they played a decent Colorado team and made them look like schoolgirls.
Colorado wasn't decent.
I said decent.
No.
Decent.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Channeling old Jeff, it's going to be, does good Bo Nix or bad Bo Nix show up? That's going to be the key.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on and talk about the USC at Notre Dame game. Notre Dame's favored by 2.5 with an over-under of 60.5.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, after USC struggled last week, 3 overtimes, I think Notre Dame, well, they also struggled last week. So I was about to say Notre Dame's going to beat the brakes off them.
They got it handed to them last week.
They did, man.
They got it handed to them. So what's going to happen, you know? Notre Dame's going to play defense. I mean, they're going to come into this game and they're going to play defense and they're going to make USC work. And USC's defense is so bad.
Pac-12.
They're so bad that Sam Hartman should put up. I mean, they should score. Well, here's the thing. There's going to be some light rain and you know, maybe some 10, 12 mile an hour winds, but I don't think that's going to stop these guys. I think they're going to come in there. You know, the over-under 60. To me, this game has a 100-point potential.
But again, looking at the schedule, they haven't played anybody.
No.
They have played 0 people that have any potential and struggled with Arizona. I mean,
everybody struggles with Arizona, though.
I still think, I know Notre Dame had a tough week last week, but I still think they're going to bounce back and I think they're going to mollywop USC.
Oh, hold on a minute. The forecast has been changing on me. I looked at it earlier. Now, here's what we got. We got 18 mile an hour winds Saturday and off and on rain with temperatures around 54, but they're going to have 18 mile an hour winds, so it's going to feel in the 40s. That might slow them down a little bit. So now I think it's going to be a 75-point game instead of a 100-point game.
Yeah, I think the under is going to be favored if the weather's that bad.
I don't know. What we're going to have to do is we're just going to have to take a look, see how that weather plays out, really. I think it's going to be hard to pick the over-under, but I honestly, I think Notre Dame's got a chance to finally put a loss on that that 0 column that USC's carrying around. So
Miami at North Carolina. North Carolina is favored by 3.5. Over and under is 60.5. Miami struggled last week. They didn't look super great. They were a 19.5 favorite and imploded, due to their own demise. And then, Drake May's coming off 442 yards and 3 TDs. So, yeah, I like North Carolina in this game.
I do too. I like North Carolina. I like that. I feel like North Carolina is going to play some good, solid defense. I think they're going to make it a little tough on Miami to move the ball up and down the field the way they have against some of these other teams this year. And just really watching some of that Georgia Tech game. I tell you what, I was over the neighbors and that Georgia Tech game was on, and there was 44 seconds left, and they were about to take that snap on 3rd down, Miami was, and I looked at the boys and I said, all right, boys, this game's over. And I walked out. By the time I walked down the driveway, across the street, and up my driveway, Georgia Tech had recovered a fumble, threw 2 passes, and won the game in 40 seconds.
It was ridiculous.
So, North Carolina to me has the edge. I'd like to see them stay undefeated and roll through this game.
Well, they're also at North Carolina, so I like that home field advantage.
Right. One last game real quick that might be a good one this weekend. Keep your eye on. You got number 16 UCLA at number 15 Oregon State. Who's going to become the 2-loss team and try to take some control out there in the Pac-12 as they continue, like I said earlier, to chew each other up out there.
Oregon State's favored by 3.5 points. Over and under is 54.5.
Yep. And then my last question about the Pac-12, and I'll shut up about them. Is Cam Rising going to play football this week?
Or this season?
Nobody knows. They won't announce it. Nobody's giving us any scoop.
Yeah, I mean, those are like the only 5 big games this week. There's just a lot of just kind of like interconference, just kind of see a bunch of 2-loss teams, 3-loss teams. From the SEC standpoint this week, there are 3 out of 5 games where the line is 3 points or less. So that should be an interesting week. The most interesting game this week will probably be the Mizzou UK game. Kentucky had a tough loss last week against a tough Georgia team. Both of them in the East Conference, and both of them are 5-1. So,
well, how'd you do last week?
Well, I won 2 and lost 1.
No.
And it increased my season total, so I'm at 53% now. So I had the Kentucky Georgia game. I actually lost that one because that's the first game that Georgia's covered all season. So that wasn't good.
Of course
for me.
they did.
Right. And then I had the Alabama Texas A&M game. I had Alabama to cover that game, and they won 26-20. Beat the 2.5 points that was they were favored by. And then Vandy versus Florida. Florida was favored by 18.5. And they end up winning that game 38-14. So 1-2 and lost 1.
Well, I'm not going to go through all mine because I had a lot of picks, but I basically did a good job on over-unders, and I missed a couple of the spread picks by 1 or 2 points, which really kind of stuck me in the foot. But anyway, I went 67 last week, so that's one of my worst weeks. I've been staying at or above 500 most time, but really since I lost all my notes for the first couple of weeks, my stats over the last 3 weeks are now 19 and 17. So barely over 500. Struggled last week. Let's see if we can get it together this week. I'll talk about a couple of mine, and then while I'm talking about them, if you're picking on the same game, let me know. So I'm starting with Georgia Vandy. You doing anything with them?
Nope.
All right, I'm going Vandy, and I'm taking the 31.5. Kirby always tends to take his foot off the gas with the teams that he knows are lesser opponents. We're going to get to see plenty of Brock Vandagriff in the fourth quarter, and maybe even some Gunnar Stockton. I am going to take over 56 because I think Kirby's going to put the brakes on at halftime, somewhere around 30-3 or 30-7, and then I think we'll squeak out a couple more touchdowns on the back end, as will Vandy. So I'm looking at something maybe like a 47-16 game, taking Vandy at plus 31.5, and I'm taking over 56.
So Jeff sent us some picks, and he had the Georgia Vandy game. He had a final score here of Georgia 42-6 for Vandy. So he's got them covering the points. So
yeah, it's tough. I've got them a spread of 31. So I got it close.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tough pick. My next one that I'm looking at. What about Ohio State? You got anything? You looking at them?
Nope.
I got Ohio State minus. No, they moved to 19, so I could get them at 19. I could drop that down a little bit. I got Ohio State at minus 19 over Purdue. Purdue is basically just a big dumpster fire this year. Earlier, when I picked it, I had them at over 49.5. Apparently, a lot of people have had that because it has now moved to 52. But I'm going to keep my 49.5 because that's where I picked it at. And roll with that. So, did Jeff have anything on Ohio State?
No.
No Ohio State picks for him. All right. What about the Tide? You do anything with Roll Tide this week?
Yeah, the Alabama versus Arkansas game. Alabama's 19.5 point favorite. I do not think that Alabama's going to cover, so I'm going to take Arkansas on that one.
Okay, so when I looked it up earlier on the same site, I had Arkansas at plus 20. So I think a lot of people are on that same bandwagon, which is why it's probably moving that direction. But I'm taking Arkansas at plus 20 in Tuscaloosa. So
how about, do you have anything on the Auburn LSU game?
I do not. I thought about it, but I am so scared of those two teams because they're Jekyll and Hyde teams.
They are. So LSU's a minus 11.5 point favorite. I don't think they're going to cover that one either, so I have Auburn on that one.
Jeff also took Auburn at plus 11. All right. How about Oregon? You got anything going on with Oregon and Washington?
No, those were my three I had. So.
All right. So I'm going Oregon. Listen, I told y'all I'm riding Oregon's wave. I'm riding Bo Nix, and I'm riding Oregon. I'm taking them at plus 3. I think you need to bet the money line for Oregon to win. And I got them at over 66. I think Oregon wins this game 44-38. puts themselves atop of the Pac-12 as the leaders.
Hopefully Bad Bo Nix stays in the truck.
Bad Bo Nix, who they play away 2 weeks ago, they had an away game, and good Bo Nix showed up on that game. Yeah. So let's see what Jeff's got on there. So he's got now, all right, so Jeff is taking Washington and the points to beat Oregon. He thinks Bad Bo Nix is going to show up. And as an Auburn fan, in all of his years with Bo Nix, he probably knows better than any of us. But I think they got a better coach than Bo Nix had when he was at Auburn. And I think they're going to do a little something up there. So next I got Arizona going to Washington State. And I think that Washington State got exposed a little bit last week. And I'm taking Arizona and the best 3-3 team in the country and my 8 points. And I think we're going to cover. All right. Notre Dame, USC. Who's going to go down to touchdown Jesus and get it done? Jeff wants USC at plus 2.5 against Notre Dame. I couldn't pick it. I had no idea. So I went with over 49 or over 59. Sorry. But there's going to be some bad weather, so I think that's a risky bet. But and then Missouri, Kentucky. I'm taking Missouri and 2.5. I got Missouri possibly upset and beat Kentucky. So I'm taking Missouri and 2.5 points against those Kentucky Wildcats. Let's see here. Let's go over. Jeff's got Cal and Utah under 45.5. Texas A&M and Tennessee under 55.5. Penn State, he's got them covering at minus 41.5 over UMass. I guess he thinks they're going to just run it up, son. Jeff's also taking Army at plus 5.5 against Troy, thinking they're going to cover. He's going in with a Bowling Green bet this week at plus 4.5 versus Buffalo. Nevada plus 9 against UNLV. NC State, Duke under 44. Interesting take there. And like I said, Auburn plus 11 over with LSU. So,
all right. So it should be a good week of football. Let's transition into this week's Stay in the Truck Awards. So we've talked about this a little bit. So my Stay in the Truck Award goes out to the Miami Hurricanes. You guessed it, head coach Mario Cristobal. Miami led Georgia Tech 20-17 with 33 seconds left in the game and decided instead of the lining up in the victory formation and taking a knee to win the game, that he was going to run the ball. So they handed the ball off to Don Chaney. He gets the ball stripped, fumbles the ball. Georgia Tech recovers and drove the ball 74 yards down the field in 25 seconds to win the game 23-20. So during Cristobal's press conference, he took the full blame for Miami's decision not to kneel the ball, basically ruining their undefeated season. So Mario Cristobal, stay in the truck.
Kneel on the ball, Cristobal. Stay in the truck. So I'm going with Stoops, Coach Stoops. Everybody knows what he said this week. He came out and said after he got the shit beat out of it by the Dogs that he reached out to the fan base in Kentucky and said, hey, down in Athens, they can afford a lot of good players, so I need y'all to pony up some money.
They are. They're buying basketball players.
Hey, listen, nothing he said was incorrect, right? I mean, he didn't say anything that was inaccurate.
But you could take the Bulldogs and plug in any Power 5 team.
Yes. The other thing that he said, though, here's why he's a stay in the truck candidate. If I played for him, I'm going to go home and tell my buddies, my coach just said that I'm not good enough. He couldn't afford better players, so he's got me instead. So I think the way he said that, nothing he said was wrong. It's something everybody knows. But as a coach of young men who you're trying to get to perform at their best for you, you got to build them up. And saying things like that is going to knock them down. So, Coach Stoops, I think you're an awesome guy, and I like what you've done with the program, buddy, but stay in the truck.
Stay in the truck. That's it for this week's show. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us some comments. Let us know how we're doing. Stay in the truck.